Hello, and welcome back to Just Talking About Sports. I'm Ethan.
I'm Matthew.
And Matt, what are we going to be doing today?
For the first time in a while, we're going to be talking about sports.
Yes, I'm finally back from college, and I don't have an excuse, and I'm finally back in my room after 2.5 months of not posting and kind of leaving everybody hanging with our Cubs predictions. But that's a whole other part. What is it? I went to college, and we had school, and school hit us, and school became more important. But now that we got more free time, and it's winter break, and guess what's back? College basketball. So you guys already know what we're going to be talking about today because the AP poll preseason is finally out. So there is plenty to talk about with the top 25 rankings that they've already come out for so far. But I have to say, we got to do a quick flashback to our first podcast that we ever did, which was great hearing our old voices. Am I right?
Yeah, I know. You know what the crazy thing is I think it's just been just under a year since we started the whole thing, and it's kind of crazy how it's turned into this. I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish.
Yep. So now we're back after being shut out and being very, very sad last season, which that whole jazz, that was very sad when we were all hyped up for pretty much one of the best March Madnesses that they ever had in store. Looked with the Dayton being ranked number 1 seed, San Diego State 2 seeds, and just plenty of more upsets for the making. And being cut short last year was very, very sad. I mean, we were not very happy when that all came out because that ended up being our last podcast, I believe, when we used to do it non-YouTube style. That was our last time we covered college basketball. And this is honestly, I'm pretty sure this is our first time for us covering college basketball on this channel. So we'll finally be able to cover all that. But without further ado, we're finally back, and let's get started with this preseason of the NCAA men's basketball 2020-2021 season. Here we go with the top seed, the Zags of Gonzaga, back up at the number 1 seed. So Matt, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, Gonzaga has really has tried to keep their big young core. They lost Killian Tilly to the draft, but they've really done a fantastic job under Mark Few to keep a lot of the big players. You still have Joel Ayayi, Corey Kispert, Drew Tim. That's the big core in Gonzaga. They remain with the team, and it's clear to everybody right now who the number 1, the big dogs are. But let's not forget Champions Classic 2019, where we learned real quick that sometimes the number 1 seed isn't always going to last. And so what Gonzaga has to do is they need to build on the preseason hype and bring it forward. They get a big transfer guard out of Florida, Andrew Nemhard. They got Aaron Cook from Southern Illinois, and they're trying to build around these young pieces. This is a team, they expect to have a lot of these players go right out into the draft. But this is the first time they've really had a big top class of young kids, freshmen, sophomores, you name it. They've normally had to rely on the older talent, as we talked with Zach Norvell, who's now on the G League team for the Lakers a couple of years ago. Just talked about Killian Tilly. This team now, they got young players, not as much experience, and so Gonzaga's going to have to prove they can still run a very successful team. And right now, they prove to be the favorite walking into a very chaotic 2020 season.
Yep, with all the craziness and the basically just to be proud of Gonzaga this is us even making it to the basketball without any crazy COVID. I know right before the start, I think we had this today actually was the first day that all the games played, and it was we had about 88% of the games. So I'm proud for the NCAA basketball to be starting in the first place. But on to the Zags. I mean, the Zags, they're the usual favorites at the start of the year, and they have plenty of talent, flooding from their roster, and their coaching has still been amazing. So the Gonzaga is a very, very clear-cut number 1 team. Before we know what everybody looks like right away, they're a smart number 1 seed. I mean, they only beat out the number 2's Baylor by 1 vote actually to be the number 1 seed in the overall poll. So it's I guess it's a good way to move into the Baylor, which is the number 1-2 seed, since I'm already talking about them. I mean, Baylor is finally kind of building their program. I mean, they used to be kind of, I guess, in a lesser known side in the Big 12. I believe they were not very well known, but in these last few years, their program is hitting all new highs. I mean, last year they were able to go 15-3. They were all up in the top rankings, I believe. I believe they were number one. They were number one seed for a decent while last season, I
Yeah,
believe.
because they were unbeaten for a while
Yeah,
until
they
they
were unbeaten,
started.
and they hit a wall against, obviously, Kansas, when we all know what that happened. But, I mean, they didn't really
Kansas.
lose that much from last season. I mean, they still have Jared Butler, their star guard, and they still have Mark Vidal, but then they're just building more and more pieces around them, just like Gonzaga is. So I believe that this Baylor team is going to be able to rebound this year, as they are already ranked higher than Kansas. So we'll see if they are going to be able to have a revenge, I guess, type season for them coming in at the number 2 seed.
Yeah, and my concern with Baylor is the same concern I had with well, it's not a concern anymore. It's the same thing that's happened to San Diego State. This is a team that could have been on a one-year run. And yes, Baylor, they're number 2 heading in. But how much of that is what we have seen in the past year in comparison to what they have now? Yes, they still have the leading scorer. And there are still a lot of things that Baylor can do well. However, they were not able to finish last year. We don't know what this team is going to look like and shape like, as we see right now. Villanova is losing in their opening game here. So these rankings are going to shake up a lot because everything is on eye test right now. We don't know anything just yet. We're going to find out what happens. But I'll transition real quick to the team that I'm going to talk about next, and that's Illinois, because this is not an eye test team. We've seen all of these players. They bring back 4 members of their starting 5. They bring back their top players, Kofi Cockburn and Ayu Dosunmu, and their 2 leading scorers in 2019-2020 season. And they are once again now in the forefront of some of these best teams. They got a fantastic recruiting class. They got a kid who is from this area, Brandon Lieb. Shout out to that guy. He went to Libertyville, right around here. And so this team is really looking good. And they won today. Granted, it was against North Carolina A&T. But they won by 62, put up 122 today in 40 minutes. 17 threes, breaks an all-time high for the school. Illinois is going to be a force. They're definitely a sleeper team. Football, basketball, they're a different beast. And I would not be surprised if you see them all the way at the end when we're talking here in March.
Yeah, there are a lot of question marks coming into this. Would this Illini team really be who they were? I mean, last year they looked like they had some sort of promise and looked like they could have made a run, as they were actually one of the better seeds in the entire Big Ten last year. But their season got cut short, and Dosunmu got injured in, I believe, one of their final games that they had, which was one of the most important games. And basically, the season was just falling apart right before they got into March Madness. So, I mean, which never ended up happening. But having them be able to have everybody now healthy, and including, like you said, the recruiting class, I mean, they are obviously looking like they're healthy and they are back. Holy moly. I mean, what is it? They put up 81 points in the first half. 81.
Yeah, and then of course,
that is
you
number
ease
1.
it all up in the second half.
That is number 1 seed category right there. So seeing a team like that be able to put up that many points this early in the season shows that they're ready and they're a force to be reckoned with. So keep an eye out for the Illini. But I'm gonna jump right back up to Nova, number 3 rankings, as they're another team that has always been a reliable team from the Big East. As they last year came out and they finished number 1 in the Big East. They finished 13-5. I believe they weren't top 5 rankings, I don't believe, or like in the top 5. They were highly ranked, but not as high as they usually are. But this year they get the number 3 ranking, and we'll see if they're going to be able to hold it. Colin Gillespie is back, and their 3-point specialist. Holy moly, he could splash it from deep, and they've got plenty of more great talents that they're able to surround them around in a really heavy Big East, really stacked Big East this season. It's gonna be tough for them, a tough schedule for them, but I feel like they are the top seed or top team in the Big East this season, and I feel like having them at the 3 seed is a very smart idea.
Yeah, and Villanova every year. I mean, they had one off year in 2018, but Villanova's been in it every year. You can guarantee that they're going to be right there every year. I mean, really, truly. You want to talk about consistency in programs. Villanova, Kansas, Duke is that upper echelon. They're there every year. You normally would be able to put North Carolina in there, but then last year happened. So, anything can happen. I think Villanova is going to be very solid again. They'll be that team that everybody, when you get into March, is like, oh, my God, we have to play them. They are so hard to beat. On a yearly basis, it's just like, oh, my God, this headache of a team that we can't get through because they're that good. We'll see. Villanova's been unstoppable in recent years. We'll see what they do this year. Hopefully now on a full season.
Yep, and having them back is going to be extremely helpful. So I'll be skipping down to another team that has been kind of similar to the Illini, where they had promise last season, but they didn't get to show up because obviously March Madness didn't happen, with Iowa ranked at number 5. And there's a reason why Iowa is ranked at number 5, because they have one beast inside the paint. The players are very, very worried about heading into the season. Luka Garza. This man is an absolute tank, as he is considered one of the best centers in the entire league. He's been playing, and he's been compared to people like Jokic, where he could be able to pass the ball. He's got some great hands, and he's got very, very talented player for Iowa. And having somebody like that in college basketball where he's that big is going to be huge coming down or towards the end of the road. So, and having him be able to be healthy, and now that I believe they're beginning to build around him too, Iowa could be a force to reckon with for like the first time in a very long time for Iowa, as they're not normally seen to be ranked this high. So having them that high is very respectable. They're above Kansas. Yes, Iowa is above Kansas in the rankings. So especially their preseason ones. So that's usually crazy. But they are being considered one of the favorites this year to win it, especially when you got a guy like Luka Garza, and we'll see what Luka can bring this year.
And I'm not as high on Iowa as a lot of people are, and I'll go ahead and explain it real quick. You want to look at teams in March Madness who have synonymously had that one big guy. You go to Wofford with Fletcher McGee, gone. Seton Hall, Miles Powell, 2 years in a row, gone. Yeah, and now you bring in Iowa. Yes, I would say that the surrounding cast is definitely better in Iowa, but Garza is the team, regardless of what anybody says. You can say, oh, there's this person, no, there's this person, but we all know who it is. It's not a mystery to us. Garza's the number one. Will always be the number one while he's still there. There's a reason why he was the AP. He was on that preseason All-American team. Not a surprise to anybody. We know how good this kid has been and can continue to be. However, it's now up to the people surrounding him, the athletes surrounding him, to help raise him up.
Yeah, I mean, the funny part, too, with the whole Iowa situation is Iowa's literally ranked below Rutgers. Yes, Rutgers last season. I mean, Rutgers was pretty good because of
still is, yeah.
And they were a bit of a surprise. But for like a team like Iowa to be below a team like Rutgers is kind of surprising, especially in basketball. But for them to be able to be ranked now number 1, basically the highest seed in the Big Ten, is a huge, huge respect. I mean, they're ahead of Wisconsin and the Illini, which, I mean, let's be honest, I don't think that's going to be there for long. But but I believe that Iowa, there's one man on that team that's a force record. I do agree with your whole thing about the one player does not carry an entire team mentality. But I feel like Iowa is still going to be a team people are going to fret. And I feel like they're going to be sticking in this top 25 for at least as long as there's a top 25 and as long as Luka Garza is playing. So,
well said. I'll go to my final team now. I'm going to go kind of quickly on both. The story is the players lost, and so I'm going to go real quick to Virginia, Kansas, and I'll touch briefly on San Diego State. Kansas is the big story. You lose Devon Dotson and Udoka Azubuike, 2 players that have been on that team for years, now both gone in the draft. Kansas now needs to find a new identity. Will they find it, or will they be the team like North Carolina last year where they lost their cavalry and they plummet? And I think that is a very real possibility, something we should watch for. Virginia lost their leader, Mamadi Diakite, another team that could really, however, they've built a fantastic recruiting class. So Virginia may be on the run. And quickly, the last one, San Diego State, Malachi Flynn. This doesn't surprise anybody. This team wasn't going to be anywhere without Malachi. It's a shame that he never really got a chance to prove how good this team could have been. But we now sit in a situation where this will be the story of this season. Players that did not get their final year, that will be what carries over to this year.
Yep, very, very well said. And I'm also just going to kind of scooch as we're running out of time. We'll probably like cut through like a few of the teams that have like big storylines. One I just had to bring up just because of a meme that they were last year. I mean, North Carolina. If anybody was paying attention to college basketball last season, usually you'd think, oh, North Carolina's an obvious bet to be in the top 25. Yike amundos. Was that a not good season for them, as they were not good at all. But I guess they've been able to recruit this year and will they fix the holes? We don't know. We'll have to see. And I'll skip down even more just because we have to look at the bottom three teams in this top 25. Pretty much the memes because of the whole Big Ten team too. I mean, we've got Ohio State, Rutgers, but my most of all favorite, our team that we love to talk about, the Michigan Wolverines. Because let's be honest, last year, if anybody also watched there, they didn't deserve to be in the top 25 for however long they were. They were so bad. But every week we'd go and we'd be seeing, oh look, there's the yellow M again. Look who's back in the top 25. But
the yellow M was there and the purple SF wasn't.
Yep, and then let's look again. Oh look, there's another yellow M in the top 25. We'll see how long that lasts this season. But Michigan.
They never cease to disappoint.
Nope.
There is a couple of other teams that I have to bring up, and it's
okay.
I'm going to be in the same category of how do you rebound from those big losses. We didn't talk about Oregon. That's oops. Oopsie. Peyton Pritchard. Yeah, that guy's kind of important to this team's success. Fortunately, we never got to see a final run from him, but that's another one of those guys that, oh boy, that's one of those guys you're going to miss, and that's why you see Oregon a little further down here than you would normally expect. As I look towards the teams that didn't quite make the top 25, and you look at like the storylines here, Seton Hall was a top team last year, barely getting any votes in this AP poll. Miles Powell, that impact. But the one team that I see on here that just I'm checking again, just make sure I might get right. How is Loyola back here again? How? What do they do? This team will forever and synonymously be known for perhaps the greatest run ever in the history of March Madness. You can argue there's been plenty of good ones. There was none better than 2018 in Loyola. If that wasn't the best March Madness tournament you ever watched, then get out the door. But with UMBC Loyola, that was like my dream Elite Eight. Just get there. That never happened. But, you look at that, and since then, they've always been there. They've been there. But they've never made it to the tournament. This is their chance to do it again. By far the favorites in our favorite conference in Missouri Valley, because we're right around this area. You never know. You never know. We'll see how we go. We'll see how far they go.
Exactly. We'll cover the Missouri Valley as we usually, or I should say we used to do in our other college basketball AP poll, our ranking breakdowns, as we love to call them. But I think we're going to have to call it for today. I mean, let's be honest, we've all gotten the college basketball fever, and it's going to be we're going to be sick with it for, I guess, the next very, very long few months before it finally reaches March. But I cannot wait to continue this. This will be our usually weekly thing as we'll break down the AP Top 25 rankings. And just know we love talking about it, and we'll try and keep these to like 10, 20-minute videos every single week just so everyone could actually pay attention to it, as we used to do it for an hour long. So trying to scrunch it as much as possible as we can and fit everything that we want to say into one video is hard for us, but we're working on it. But other than that, I think that is it for our preseason rankings for the AP poll for 2020-2021 season. Cannot wait for NCAA basketball to be back and another great season. Hopefully we can make it to March Madness this year.
Yeah, I hope so too. We're going to see how March Madness is, because chances are by March we're still not going to have a normal. No matter what, this is still going to be a crazy year. A lot of storylines and more unpredictability than ever before. We've seen it in all the sports that have returned so far. The unpredictability has been the story. Let's see if it's the story here.
Yep, and it'll spice things up. So cannot wait for it. We are always going to do it, and so stay tuned for our next episode. But until then, I'll see you guys later.